Welcome back to Rootvolutionary. In our continued exploration of complex historical figures, we pick up the story of Nathan Bedford Forrest, a man whose life on the frontier would forge a temperament equally suited to commerce, conflict, and ultimately, war. The community of Hernando, Mississippi, during Nathan Bedford Forrest's period there, working with his uncle Jonathan as a dealer in animals, was comprised of merely a handful of structures. Yet to Forrest, raised in backcountry conditions, it likely seemed like a metropolis. Forrest transported his unwavering defense of kin to Hernando, too. While entering the settlement on horseback one afternoon, 4 riders also approached from the other way, aiming to attack his uncle Jonathan. Forrest faced the quartet, triggering a gunfight. During this exchange, a round meant for Forrest struck Jonathan, inflicting a fatal injury. Once Forrest had discharged all chambers of his revolver, 2 attackers lay dead, but 2 survived. A bystander tossed him a large knife, and he gave chase, but the men escaped. This was not Forrest's sole violent encounter in Hernando. Traveling the road alongside his friend and attorney, James K. Morris, a local farmer named James Dyson came near, produced a double-barreled shotgun, and fired, killing Morris. Dyson then swung the weapon toward Forrest, vowing to shoot him, presumably because he was the solitary witness. Forrest drew a handgun and advised Dyson he had better be certain of his shot, as this was now a sport 2 could play. Dyson retreated and rode away. Residing in Hernando, Forrest once encountered a desperate circumstance at a creek crossing. A carriage occupied by 2 women was mired midstream. A male driver struggled with all his strength to urge the horses to pull them free, but could not move them. Bedford arrived and instructed the driver to cease lashing the animals as it was futile. He then proceeded to carry each woman ashore. The wagon was freed and the women prepared to depart, but before leaving, Bedford inquired if he might visit the 19-year-old Mary Ann Montgomery, whom he had just aided. Permission was granted and the ladies left. However, Forrest's task was not complete. 2 men had observed from the bank without assisting. He drove them away. The following day, Bedford called on Mary Ann, but upon arrival he discovered the same 2 men he had chased from the creek, now in the parlor. Before Mary Ann could come in, Forrest, in a manner unique to him, persuaded them to exit the home. When Mary Ann walked into the parlor, Forrest was the only person present. During their second encounter, Bedford proposed to the young woman. She managed to postpone a reply, but at their 3rd meeting he asked once more, and she consented. Yet her guardian, an uncle, refused his approval. He informed Bedford that due to his swearing and gaming, he could not permit his niece to wed him. The uncle stated she was a devout Christian girl, and Forrest responded that this was precisely why he wished to marry her. In time, the uncle relented, and the couple married, producing just 2 offspring, a son and a daughter. The boy was called William, and the girl was named Fanny, probably for his deceased twin sister. Forrest worked many roles, including as a constable, coroner, and trader of livestock and other minor enterprises. But he understood he could not give his family the existence he desired in Hernando. While there, he had engaged in selling enslaved people and observed the vast profits available. Thus he relocated his household to Memphis, Tennessee, on the Mississippi River, and started a business trading in slaves. His enduring associate in this enterprise was Josiah Maples, and they established Forrest and Maples, a firm trafficking enslaved persons. Their operation was highly lucrative, Forrest amassing a fortune by the outbreak of the Civil War. Traders of slaves, by common notoriety, were viewed as dishonest or despicable. Yet Forrest's standing with purchasers of slaves permitted him to avoid that disgrace. What truly established Forrest's business was a dishonorable deed by a major competitor in Memphis. The city was ideal for the slave trade because enslaved people from Missouri, Kentucky, and even Virginia were being sent to the Deep South, and the Mississippi River served as a chief thoroughfare. Memphis stood at the doorway to the Deep South. Forrest's buying agent, named James McMillan, obtained the apprenticeship papers of a free black man, and sold them to a trader named Washington Bolton of Bolton, Dickens and Company. Bolton sold the black man as a slave, not an apprentice, who subsequently sued Bolton for illegally selling him into bondage, and the black man prevailed. The Boltons were enraged and summoned McMillan to their premises. Upon his arrival, Isaac Bolton and 2 other individuals awaited him. The 2 other men exited, and Isaac pulled a pistol, demanding restitution for his losses from McMillan. When the agent stated he had no money for him, Bolton shot, fatally injuring him. Isaac then placed a large knife beside him to allege self-defense. McMillan survived long enough to recount events to Forrest. At the trial, Forrest testified for the prosecution. However, Bolton was found not guilty. Nonetheless, the legal proceedings in Bolton's standing were so harmed by his conduct that the firm collapsed. This propelled Forrest and Maples to the summit of Memphis slave trading, granting Forrest the monetary security to buy a plantation. His plantation was worked by many enslaved people and spanned hundreds of acres. He had ascended from an impoverished frontier youth to a millionaire benefiting from the major slave trade in Memphis. Forrest became a city alderman, where he sought to expand the municipal economy and establish it as a force on the Mississippi. By all reports, he did not let politics debase him. In one instance, the city planned to construct a new wharf. They employed a builder who commenced work and performed well, but the pier's end was harmed by high water. The alderman went to inspect the ruin. Before reaching the damaged section, the alderman concluded it was hopeless. Forrest grew curious and insisted on knowing why they decided without reviewing the pier. A leading alderman took Forrest aside and said if they deemed it ruined, they need not pay the builder and could award the contract to a friend. Forrest erupted, saying, "You infernal scoundrel, do you dare ask me to be as rascal as yourself? I have a big notion to pitch you into the Mississippi River. Now, I warn you, if you ever presume to address such a proposition to me in future, I will break your rascally neck." As the 1860 election neared, Forrest focused his politics locally, monitoring national events but awaiting outcomes. In December 1860, South Carolina left the Union, and the Deep South followed, including Mississippi. Forrest held substantial property in that state, but waited to see Tennessee's choice. After the attack on Fort Sumter, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln requested 75,000 volunteers to suppress the revolt, pushing the Upper South, including Tennessee, into the Confederacy. Forrest went to Memphis and enlisted in a cavalry company as a common soldier. The unit traveled to the Mississippi River to build defenses, but Forrest's reputation meant he remained with them briefly. Tennessee's governor awarded him a field commission and instructions to recruit a cavalry regiment, which he accomplished, equipping them with arms brought from home, particularly pistols and shotguns, hinting at the close-quarters combat Forrest anticipated and favored. Regrettably, shortages of arms and gear afflicted Southern units widely, but Forrest was not passive. While other commands quarreled over supplies across the Deep South, Forrest looked toward Kentucky. He and some troops covertly entered the Bluegrass State in July 1861 to obtain weapons and equipment, notably saddles. Forrest searched the region near the Ohio River, focusing on Lexington, Frankfort, and Louisville. Bedford covertly met associates in those cities and secured 500 pistols and roughly 100 saddles, plus other gear. In Louisville, they concealed the material in a pro-Confederate stable and placed the pistols and smaller items into sacks marked as potatoes or coffee. Forrest was a recognizable personality even this early in the war, due to his pre-war commercial ties and ventures, making his clandestine mission difficult. While his men moved the supplies south, Forrest rode through town to mislead Unionists and suggest he was still gathering material. At Munfordville, Kentucky, Bedford, and his force heard of a Home Guard unit patrolling the area. Forrest chose to employ trickery to ensure safe travel. He ordered all his troopers and their accompanying family members to form a line along the railroad tracks entering Munfordville. As a train passed, passengers would see the sizable Confederate group and report the large force to troops in town. The home guards departed, and Forrest's men traveled through without trouble. Deception would become a signature of his military career. Thus Forrest and his command reached Confederate territory, better prepared for the coming campaigns. This chapter of Forrest's rise, marked by personal violence, shrewd business, and early wartime cunning, sets the stage for his brutal military career. To follow the full, unvarnished journey of this and other pivotal figures, make sure to subscribe to Rootvolutionary. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the complexity